Pooja, I can't see you. Sorry.
Is it okay? I
Yes.
don't know why I feel like it's a bit patchy. Should I do it on my phone? I don't know. Sorry, just give me one second.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sonali Gupta. I'm a clinical psychologist. I've been working for last 16 years, and I'm super excited. My book is out. It's called Anxiety: Overcome It and Live Without Fear.
Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I think today's discussion is very crucial, it's very important, especially given the times that we're living in. Anxiety, what is it? How do you deal with it? Do you have it? Is it really a negative emotion or can you use it to your advantage? We're going to be covering all of those things in my conversation today with a Mumbai-based psychologist, Sonali Gupta. And I really hope this discussion helps you.
First, thank you for being here with us today. I think that especially considering how hard the last 3 months have been, getting information from you about how, we view our mental health, what is anxiety. I think you can, shine a lot of light on that for us today, and also talk to us about your book and how that came about. So, congratulations. Where's the book? Can we see a copy? Can we see the copy?
Yes, I'm very happy, my baby. The longest labor, as I say.
Amazing, incredible. So,
the paperback is here.
So how did the book come to be?
Yes. So, in 2018, HarperCollins reached out to me and they had this idea about the book around, my editor had the idea that I should do a book possibly around anxiety. And I was wondering at that point whether I should do a book around relationships or anxiety. And, which is, for the longest time, I wanted to write a book around relationship. And there were a couple of other conversations going at the same time. When she spoke about anxiety, I went and looked back at my notes from last 14 years. And, that I realized two things. One, when it comes to anxiety and panic attacks, both men and women, an equal number reach out to me. Second, I felt that, from 2013 to 2018, the number of people who were talking about anxiety, who were feeling anxious, whether it's in relationships, in relation to social media or workplace, had significantly increased. Never before had I seen so many people who were struggling with anxiety.
So what is anxiety? Before we go further, like, can you define, like, how do you know what is anxiety? How do you define it?
Yes, absolutely. So anxiety is this feeling of nervousness, apprehension, where we are wondering what's going to happen in the future about things or tasks lined up for the future. It's also this feeling where we feel we don't have control about the future. And like a time like COVID, where all of us are feeling that anxious, everyone is anxious because there are no timelines. We don't know what future looks like. I think the anxiety is also in the context of our fears about how people who are close to us, our friends, people who don't know, how they'll interpret what we are going to say. So sometimes, people, even before they get into a conversation, or in a pre-pandemic world, when they would go out to a party, they would play out the conversation 100 times in their head because they are anxious. They didn't know what conversations would look like. So that's what anxiety is.
So I was going through the book. There's quite a few similarities between being anxious and several other emotions that we go through, right? Like, for example, not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow. I could be afraid of that as well. So how do I differentiate between whether I'm just nervous, whether I'm afraid, or whether I'm like, how do I define if I'm anxious?
Anxiety is different from fear because when we have fear, there is one particular stressor we relate to. When it comes to anxiety, on the other hand, anxiety can be far ambiguous. There can be everything going all right and you could just be anxious. So, clients would say that my parents are absolutely fine, but I'm really anxious about the fact that what if something happens to them in the future?
Correct.
Or, at this point, a lot of people are anxious, but at an earlier time, a lot of people would say that I have anxiety about not having anxiety. How is my mind coping? There are no
why are we like this? Like, everyone goes through some level of anxiety. I mean, some, I read in the book as well, like people have, like, say, for example, travel anxiety, or there was this instance that you gave of this girl who always needed to be, you know, on time and prepared, and, travel anxiety. So this is something that I feel that we all go through in our daily lives anyway. So when is this problematic, or when do you need to reach out for help?
So I think, as you rightly said, everybody feels anxious. It's a myth when people say that, oh, I know this one who never gets anxious. I'm I don't think I've ever met anyone who doesn't get anxious. All of us get
Yeah.
anxious. During the last 3 months, I've done webinars, conversations. I've always been anxious. What if my Wi-Fi stops working?
Yeah.
What if something goes wrong?
Correct.
And and it is an anxiety that's there. Or in current times, when I'm doing video calling sessions, the anxiety is when my clients are crying, I can't even extend a tissue to anyone.
Correct.
So anxiety is a consistent part of all our lives. It becomes a concern when the anxiety becomes overwhelming, one. Second, when the anxiety is very high in intensity. Second, also thirdly, when in the context of frequency, the symptoms of anxiety like labored breathing, like feeling a pit in the stomach, the nausea, breathlessness, when all of these end up, happening way too frequently, they are of very high intensity, and they in turn interfere with our functioning. Like a client of mine, every time they would have to get onto a flight, she would feel such labored breathing, there would be a pit in the stomach, nausea, dizziness, feeling that I would end up throwing up, that she ended up, not sleeping for 3 to 4 days before she got onto a flight.
Are those also, would you call that a panic attack?
So if they are of high intensity and they are all combined together happening at a certain time, with with a feeling that you're losing control and something is slipping away, a lot of symptoms of anxiety are symptoms of panic attack, where people just feel they are losing control,
Correct.
something is happening to them. And in most cases, people don't even know. And in fact, one of the reasons for doing the book was that anxiety has become this buzzword.
Correct.
It's so normalized that nobody thinks it's a problem. Everybody thinks that, oh, everybody feels anxious, so I don't need to deal with it. It's the opposite, that you need to learn how to manage anxiety. And I don't think anxiety is a negative emotion,
Yeah.
but actually needs to be managed, which is the most important.
I mean, and that's great, because that was going to be my next question. When you say that it's a good servant but a bad teacher, and you say that it is not a negative emotion, how can one harness this anxiety? How can you use it to your advantage? How does that work?
Anxiety has a positive side, which allows us to channelize that restlessness into doing something. So let's say if there's a speech to give, or when I had to write the book, there was this restless energy that gets you going. You want to prepare well, you want to research well. I'm
Yeah.
sure you relate to that.
Yeah.
Even when you're making a new recipe, it comes with that restless energy, right?
Yeah.
And as we channelize it, it helps us, get to a better result. It helps us come to a point where, we have used that restless energy to our advantage. It is helping us in our day-to-day functioning. And in those moments, anxiety is a healthy emotion. Or just before, let's say, before a big game that you have, a tournament you have, or before, actors go on shoots, that anxiety allows them to prep enough to,
Hmm.
be ready for what they have to do.
So this is like the butterflies in the stomach, or yeah. Okay.
Yeah, those butterflies in the stomach, feeling that heady rush, in your
Yeah.
head. There's so much happening, but you like that sense of being overwhelmed, and you want to get
Correct.
ahead with it. It becomes negative and overwhelming, and the same comment that Jerry made,
Yeah.
when it starts controlling us, then it becomes like, it starts managing us rather than we being able to manage our own anxiety. So it becomes so overwhelming that people before a speech will feel that they are tongue tied. So they may
Hmm.
not be able to enter a
Correct.
meeting room. They are tongue tied. At other times, the same people, would be, let's say, they have to go on a date, or they have to go to a party, and they will end up not just avoiding the party altogether because they are feeling massively anxious. and no other reason. So
Hmm.
in all those cases where anxiety, leads to a massive panic attack or a
Correct.
panic attack that even lasts for few minutes, it's a red flag. Also, when it starts interfering with your sleep. So what
Hmm.
happens is a lot of people who are very anxious, they struggle with sleep, insomnia. They are not able to sleep at all. When you're avoiding events, when the anxiety is so crippling that you feel that you consistently have to find other ways to manage. Like, there for some people, it may manifest in increased cigarette breaks, smoking far more than what they used to,
Hmm.
drinking far more, or consuming even large cups of coffee back to back, because they feel they are so anxious at the end of
Or sugar.
the day. All of that.
Cool. Yeah. No, I mean that's that's I think we all have triggers somewhere, and I think that for each person. So I think this myth of like, oh, I'm not anxious or nothing gets to me is I think completely wrong. And there's no point in like denying it or hiding it. There's whether you're a man or a woman, we all go through it. uh, the
Yes,
last the last 3 months for me have been like severely, like the at least the first 2 weeks of April, when we
yes,
decided that we had to close our cafe, and I didn't know what was going to happen with the team. It was tough, and I went through all emotions, from sadness to anger to be feeling anxious to all of that. And I think that we're human beings, and I think it's good to acknowledge how you feel. How do you see social media playing a part in anxiety, and how do we manage to kind of control this from our end?
so I think we wouldn't have been able to do this at a time like this without, technology
Correct.
and then social media. This would play out on social media. So I think we all need social media technology. I think the important thing is learning how to manage social media and technology in our life. At the same time, I think this technology, social media, has led to what I call in the book also the itch, right? Like, when your phone is away, but you have this itch when you get up, you
Yeah.
want to check the last thing before you, and all of us are guilty
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's like, I'm watching a movie and there's one scene which is dragged a little.
So
I
you
will
pick up
just
the
like reach out for
phone.
my phone. Yeah, like it's like I've already gotten bored and I'm looking at my phone. It's just microseconds and you end up doing that. And I think with social media, no matter what platform we are using, I think we are walking with a consistent dopamine drip. You have like that ping, the notification has a particular sound.
Yeah.
Every time you get that, our brain is so wired to it. So it's like walking with the dopamine drip. Social media makes its appearance to therapy very often, where
Correct.
people would say everybody is doing well within the pandemic. Everybody is cooking all
Productive.
possible. Yeah, so like there's new productivity guilt even within the pandemic at large. So people
Hmm.
think those snapshots are almost representative of
Correct.
people's full life. Nobody really knows that before you posted that beautiful picture, you were crying, and that's why you posted that picture, so that
So
you
you
get
to feel
likes
better.
and you feel better,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
And everyone has that story to tell, where they posted a picture in the middle of the night because they were not getting sleep.
Hmm.
And it has become a tool where people are constantly seeking validation. And I think at the same time we do need social media for our work too. So it's in this tricky space where we need to figure the balance around it.
So how do you find that balance? When the lockdown started for 1 week, I just completely went off the internet completely. I was like, I needed to understand, I needed to grieve, I needed to know what was happening, and I just wanted to be away from everything. It was a bit extreme, also, I think, to just cut off like that, and it's not good to live in the extreme. So, are there something that you can give us that how do you manage your time on social media? How do you manage these things? What have you seen that works for people that you speak to?
Okay, so yes, so I think one of the first thing that works for people is to identify that what emotion does social media trigger for them, after they have posted. Are they using it passively just to check on other people's life, or are they using it actively to post information there?
Correct.
And what emotion does it trigger for them? Like, a client I worked with would say that I would have a fully productive week. On the weekend, I'll just go and, check and maybe post a couple of things. But would say those 10 minutes would turn into 1 hour, and would say at the end of that 1 hour, I've had this nice lunch, with family. I'm massively low, because social media on most days feels like one is overwhelmed with too much information about people's life, what they are doing. And these are also people who are sometimes very different from us.
Correct.
And what people end up doing is people end up comparing, that their outsides to, in that sense, what they are seeing, on social media to how they feel internally. So they are comparing other people who are far different from them with their own life. So social media has led to that competition where people are not just competing with people in their own field. They are competing with everybody out
Everyone.
there. I use, this personal acronym, which is also part of the book, called RESET, which basically has to do with recognizing when you are on social media, when do those thought spirals and a downward spiral starts. So, figuring out that, is it on the weekend that you begin that downward spiral?
Correct.
Is it that you begin that spiral, end of the day towards night? So my personal observation with my clients is that 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. is the panic hour. People are most likely to have panic attacks between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. And that's also the time, I feel, when it comes to recognizing the hour of reset, that's the time people are most likely to go into a thought spiral and feel horrible about their own life.
Correct.
Because that's when we used to go to work, that was the only time we used to give ourselves permission to even think or to check other people's accounts, all of that. And the second bit to it is examine, which is about examine that feeling. So if the feeling is like this client of mine said, that in the month of December, he was on social media and he said that everybody had posted pictures with family, people wore their pictures of cakes, all of it. And there was a massive sense of, low he started feeling. He recognized the feeling was of sadness, and then he needed to examine what had triggered it. So he realized he was sitting alone in his house. He was seeing pictures of everyone having a good time with other people. Of course, not knowing that even people who are sharing pictures with other people may have fought with them before after them. He didn't think of that. And so examining, and then recognizing the self-sabotaging belief. So in this case, his self-sabotaging belief was, everybody has family other than me. Everybody has partner other than me. I am sitting alone and I'm sulking at home. So identifying your self-sabotaging belief in that case. And, the other E, which stands for, is engagement. So research massively proves that with social media, people who use social media to engage with others, to build interface with the users, have a conversation, do far better than people who are just using social media for passive consumption. So if you're going to be just moving from one account to another and spending long hours, you are likely to feel massively low. And I think the last bit is recognizing when to take a time out. So, I think even if you took that, Pooja, that week, if that was your time out to be not affected by, not overwhelmed by too much information,
Correct.
that's absolutely fine. That's like a digital detox, like a digital, Sabbath one takes to just recenter oneself. I remember when I was writing the book, for about good 3 months, I chose to remove all social media from my phone.
Okay, because that
So
just so that you would just have more focused.
yes, and I would keep it, I would bring it back when I needed to post it, once in a while, or use the laptop. But the deep work was possible sometimes because I was not looking at what was happening. I didn't have any lens around what the world is doing, what's the pace of the world. It was just easier to keep the focus on writing. So, so that's why I ended up just sticking to that. And I think also what I think we miss out on social media is we don't know people's stories. We don't know what are their struggles. We are making assumptions way too soon, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And for all of us who grew without social media, we know everybody has a long enough story, and social media doesn't tell the story well.
Yeah. So I mean, thank you. That was really quite insightful. Like you said, it's become so normalized that it's a part of everyone's life. But I think really getting down to what it means to you, how can you harness it, how can you use it to your advantage. If you had to just have 2 minutes to tell somebody why they should get the book, what would you tell them?
So I think the book is for anyone and everyone who wants to understand what anxiety is. If you think, you wonder if you're anxious or not, and, people, a lot of people tell me they don't know if they're anxious enough, or, do they even need help because it's so normalized. The book will give you a primer to that. I think the book also, gives you a lot of toolkit. It's a toolkit,
Mhm.
emotional toolkit for you to manage your own anxiety. So even if your anxiety is low, moderate, you may be able to get some tools to manage it on your own. And I think also in a country like ours, particularly, I feel, parents, caregivers also need to buy it, because I think they need to know how to deal with anxiety that they are struggling with, which they are also. But they come from a generation where nobody really reached out for something like anxiety.
Correct.
And
Correct.
also now they need to, it would help them as caregivers to be able to identify sometimes when their children have panic attacks or when their children are struggling. So it's a primer, it's a toolkit for anyone who needs to understand how to enhance their functioning and what are some tools of improving your life and how to channelize that anxiety at the end. So whether it's millennials, Gen
Yeah.
Z, or their parents, all across.
Yeah, no, so I mean thank you so much. That is, it's been great talking to you. I've been reading the book myself. I haven't finished it yet, but I think so much has come to light because for me as well, like I'm trying to understand what my triggers are, and in relation to when do I feel low, why do I feel low. So I think it's helping me getting to know myself better, and hopefully then helping me to deal with all the situations better. And I think it's important to also say that it's never too late to start looking for help. It's never too late to reach out to people. I'm not everyone does have the I think privilege to go to someone to talk to, but I think that this could be a starting point to just understanding yourself better.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for reading. And I think, as you said, Pooja, I think it's important for people to recognize that, that one of the reasons we continue to not address anxiety is also because we struggle with being self compassionate. We find it very hard to pay the same attention and love to ourselves that we would do to others. So, we are far more compassionate to our friends and family than we are to
Correct.
us. And I think that, that's the number one reason for our anxiety. And that's why it's never too late. So, my
Mm.
youngest client would be about 15 years old.
Oh,
My
wow.
oldest client with anxiety is about 80 years old. So,
It's
the
all range.
yeah, and but my 80-year-old client started work in therapy when she was about 78.
So it's never
And
too late.
she, yeah, and she has made massive stride, like 2 years and massive improvement. And I'm a big believer of neuroplasticity, and I feel that for all of us, and even an activity like reading, or the brain is capable of rewiring itself, and we need to all figure out ways that we can rewire itself. And and even for young people out there, it's important to remember that you can rewire it yourself, and also find ways to not consistently feel so much anxiety if they are feeling, to identify it and then figure out ways to manage it. Because I think we are failing our young people if we don't give them the tools to deal with
Tools.
their anxiety. And
Okay.
that's very important. I hope you really enjoyed our conversation. If you did, please like, subscribe, and what was the last one?
Share.